Hi, my name is Mike Tyler. Welcome to this webinar on teaching with YouTube. The plan is in this short video to talk about some of the benefits of using YouTube alongside your teaching and some of the things to think about, some of the potential pitfalls, and then we'll finish up just talking about how to actually go about doing it. So there are several benefits in my view of teaching with YouTube. These are not in any particular order here, just things that come to mind as I think about my own use of YouTube. I've been using YouTube alongside my teaching for about 4 or 5 years now, for various tasks and for various reasons. But let's talk about some of those. So the first thing is that YouTube enables the students to have some autonomy over their learning. But one of the best ways to do that is to use lots of different shortish YouTube clips. So smaller videos, segmented videos that just take a small bit of information or a small bit of learning at a time, sort of a maximum of about 20 minutes, I guess. The students can watch that, they can re-watch it, they can go back, they can rewind, they can return to it at a later date if they're not sure they understand some of the concepts. So YouTube is really helpful in that it enables the students, well, it enables us as teachers to segment learning into little chunks, and then it enables the students therefore to work through at their own pace. So it gives them that little bit of autonomy, which is really useful to them. Another benefit is that it can be used for pre-teaching. So for example, if you know in a lesson you're going to have everybody in for a lesson, or you're going to be teaching face to face a new concept, what you might want to do is set a YouTube video for pre-teaching, and that video might include explanation of some of the key terms that are going to be coming up in the next lesson. That might be really helpful, especially for our SEND students with various additional needs. They might need a little bit of help accessing some of the key terminology, for example, and pre-teaching via YouTube is a really helpful way of doing that to make sure they're included when we come to the lesson itself. It's also useful in terms of stretch and challenge. So it might be the case that if you've got a particularly content heavy section of the curriculum with some difficult concepts, it might be that in live lessons, face-to-face lessons, you would go through the basics of the concept, and then the students that seem to grasp it and need to move on can have YouTube sessions set for them. They can watch YouTube videos that will take them on from where you've got to in the lesson. Whilst in the lesson, perhaps you can then review and recap and so on with the students that weren't so confident. So YouTube videos are helpful for stretch and challenge as well. Revision as well is really useful via YouTube. There are stacks and stacks and stacks of teachers and lecturers making YouTube videos at the moment. Probably you'll be able to find plenty of them for your subject. It kind of depends on the subject to some extent, of course, but there's lots and lots of revision materials. And also, if you're making your own YouTube videos, it may be that you can direct your students back to them repeatedly to review stuff that they've done previously. If you say, for example, have some teaching in September and then the exams in January, well, if some of that teaching's been done via YouTube, you can guide those students back to review and recap stuff that they did without having to reteach, because it's there already on YouTube. Another benefit of using YouTube is that because it's such a major platform, because it's so sort of global now, its functionality is really good. So one of the key things in that regard is that it's embeddable. So you can take your YouTube videos and you can embed them into Moodle, you can embed them into Blackboard or any other VLEs that we use, and it's really quite simple to do. And then finally, the last benefit, and there are plenty of others, but this is another one that will link into some of the pitfalls that I'll talk about in just a moment, is that because YouTube is such a massive platform, there are loads of videos already out there. So there's a load of ready-made videos with varied ways of people explaining things and so on. So it might be helpful for our students to have access to a series of videos, perhaps with concepts that we've explained in lesson that they can hear explained by somebody else, and perhaps just having a kind of a multitude of voices all explain the same concepts in slightly different ways might be helpful for our students. And the ready-made argument as well, of course. You don't need to spend ages making the videos yourself, which I'll come on to in just a second. But you don't need to make all the videos yourself because there's stacks of them available already. You just need to kind of find the right ones and check that they're the right level and so on. But almost certainly you'll be able to find at least something that will be helpful to kind of augment or sit alongside your teaching. Okay, so what about then some of the potential pitfalls of using YouTube alongside your teaching? I keep saying alongside your teaching or with your teaching rather than as you're teaching. And one of the reasons for this is I think that we need to avoid over-reliance on sending students online to learn stuff all the time. Obviously, we've had the situation with the lockdown where that's been absolutely necessary. But as much as possible, I think we want to try and avoid just outsourcing all of our teaching to YouTube. So we teach and we can use YouTube to help with our teaching, to augment it, to kind of like some of the things I've just mentioned, to help us with students that we need to push on, to help us with students that need a little bit more help with some of the concepts and so on. But it's a tool to use alongside our teaching. So what are some of the pitfalls? Well, the first thing that you're probably thinking about is, well, how long is it going to take me? A, to make some videos, B, to get comfortable using YouTube and embedding them and getting them out there and so on. And it's absolutely true that there is a time cost to this. There's no point pretending there isn't. But it very much depends on what kinds of videos you want to make, or if you're not going to make videos and you're going to find other people's videos, you are obviously going to need to watch those videos just to make sure they're suitable at the right level, the language is suitable and all the rest of it. So there is definitely a time cost associated with teaching with YouTube. However, once you've made those videos, if you do choose to make videos and you can do face-to-face on camera, or you can do them like I'm doing where we just narrate over a PowerPoint, there's several different ways, screen sharing apps and stuff like that. There's several different ways of making videos, and basically any video you make you can pretty much upload to YouTube to use alongside your teaching. Bear in mind, once it's made, it's kind of in the bag, and you can use it again. And some of my own YouTube videos that are on my channel, I've used several times now, again and again and again, and over time I'm sort of building up a bank of videos, and every week or two I produce another video, and it's not a massive time cost to me now because I've kind of got used to the process of making them and so on. So yes, there'll be a time cost, but that time cost is both dependent on what kinds of videos you want to use or make, but also there's the benefit later down the line where you don't have to reteach stuff live necessarily. You've got stuff in the bag already that you can just point your students to. So that's probably the main thing to cover in terms of pitfalls. Other things include obviously things like logistics, things like student internet access. Obviously in our context we know that not all of our students do have internet access, and so it's probably a good idea not to over rely on stuff being sent out via YouTube. It seems to me the best way to think about this is if any new information or any new skills or any new knowledge is being taught, ideally that would not happen on YouTube, and YouTube would be used to augment or to consolidate or to stretch and challenge or so on. So ideally anything novel or new where you're presenting it for the first time, ideally that would be done face to face, and then additional tasks, additional thinking, additional work can be done via YouTube. And the reason that's helpful for students without internet access is at least they're not missing out on the key stuff. And if we're not over relying on YouTube, then when they're on campus, at least they can log on and they can watch the additional stuff whilst they're on site. But we need to, I think in my view at least, we need to be careful that although we can use YouTube for pretty much everything, I'm not sure it's wise to do so, because we need to be bearing in mind those students who don't have massive data allowances, who don't have internet access at home and so on. So it's just something to bear in mind. And then one other pitfall is if you are going to be using YouTube, make sure that the videos that you're selecting or the videos that you're making have decent audio and have decent video. There's nothing more off-putting than trying to watch something or listen to an explanation of something where you can't quite make out what's being said, or it's grainy, or it's unclear. So as much as possible, try to use the best available equipment that you've got. You know, if you are really going to go down sort of the YouTube rabbit hole and you want to get really good at it, then you might want to think about buying a standalone microphone or something like that. But most laptops have good enough webcams built in these days. Most laptops have good enough microphones built in. But just if you haven't, then just think about the quality of the clips that you're putting out there, and that goes for whether you make them yourself or whether you're going to be kind of curating them from YouTube itself of existing videos. So in terms of the how-to of teaching with YouTube, just let's finish up here quite briefly with the way that I go about making my YouTube videos. And the first thing is obviously to make the videos. And I've said already, there's a bunch of different possible ways of doing it. Kind of the main three, I guess, would be screen sharing, recording your screen would be the first thing. If you're teaching somebody how to use an app, for example, or navigating around a website or something, screen sharing is really useful for that. Secondly, you can teach to camera. So if you've got a camera or if you want to use your webcam, you can do that as well. And then the way that I tend to do it is I tend to narrate a PowerPoint, and there's various reasons for that, sort of from a pedagogy point of view. If you can head across to the other webinar that I did recently about how to make online learning materials, you'll see some of the thinking behind the structure of the PowerPoints that I make and so on. And so you've got to make your video and make it as clear and as plain as possible, hopefully not too long. I would recommend somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes if you possibly can. Anything too much longer than that, you'll get people starting to switch off and lose attention. So once you've made your videos, then you'll need to go to YouTube and upload them. Incidentally, if you've got a Gmail account, then you've also got a YouTube account. You can go to YouTube via the Gmail. They call it the waffle, I believe. Click on the menu, the YouTube menu, and there should be a button in the corner that says upload. It's really straightforward. Just follow the instructions to upload the video. You can drag and drop them in there, and then once you've dragged and dropped it in, you need to give it a title, give it a description, and once you've got your title and description and made sure that that's all clear and explains what's on the video, then the YouTube algorithm will use that information to kind of promote those videos, and you know, when you get suggested videos, that's how the algorithm works out what to suggest next. However, you can just skip that step, and I would recommend doing so and putting your videos into a playlist. Now you can create a playlist really easily in YouTube. What I would recommend doing is, if whether or not you're making your own videos or you're sourcing somebody else's videos or you're making a combination of the two, you can put those into playlists according to topics or according to units that you're teaching and so on, and maybe number them or order them in the order that you'd like the students to work through them. So the playlist function is actually really helpful. I use playlists for different units that I teach. So for example, I have an anatomy and physiology playlist, which is kind of the majority of my videos are going in there at the moment. And they're just numbered and work through in order, and the students are able to just work through at their own pace. And they don't have to go searching for wherever the next video might be. It will autoplay. And so you can set a playlist to do that. And that's really helpful. And you can have, within a playlist, you can have your own videos and other people's videos in the same playlist. And so that's helpful if, like I say, if you're not going to make your own videos, and that's totally fine. If you find valuable stuff on there, pull it together in a playlist for your students, and then it's kind of a one-stop shop. They can just go straight to the playlist. The other thing that you can do is embed those videos, as we talked about previously. You can embed those videos, so you can put YouTube videos into Moodle, for example. It's really quite simple. The embed codes are really easily accessible on YouTube underneath underneath the video, you can hit the share button and it will give you an option to choose embed, and it will give you the HTML code. You copy and paste that code, well, it's one way of doing it at least, into Moodle, and that will put the videos into Moodle for you. There are other ways of doing it as well. So embed those videos wherever you want your students to see them. So if you want to avoid them going to YouTube, for whatever reason, you don't want them on YouTube too much, you want them to be accessing, let's say for example, you want them to watch a video and then complete a task, you can put the video onto Moodle with the task underneath it on Moodle, and you can actually use then the YouTube videos in a Moodle course. Most of you, I'm sure, know how to do that already. And then finally, make sure you share them, so you can share them directly. So one of the things that I've done previously is, once I've taught a lesson, I will send a stretch and challenge video within sort of 15 minutes of the lesson ending, and it will just be a link to students' phones. Since again most of them do have smartphones, again bear in mind that not everyone has internet access, but most of them do have smartphones, I'll send a link with some stretch and challenge, a short stretch and challenge video for example, or a recap video, or a review of something we did the previous week, or whatever it might be, and send it out via a link on straight to their phones, and they can just sit and watch it on the bus home, or watch it while they're sat in the canteen or whatever. So that's it in terms of this webinar. I hope that's been useful for you. Those are just some of my ideas about teaching with YouTube, some of the benefits, some of the pitfalls, and then briefly how to go about it. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how to go about teaching with YouTube and the actual practical aspects of uploading videos and adding tags and all that sort of thing, there's loads of videos on YouTube. I'll find one and I'll put one in the links below in the description, so you can head across there if you want an actual tutorial on how to actually do it, rather than just why you might want to. Then, like I say, I'll put that in the links in the description. If you've got any questions, stuff that I mentioned that wasn't clear, or stuff that you've thought of that you would like to ask about, again, put that in the comments and I'll try and get around to answering those for you. But other than that, I hope that's been helpful. My name's Mike Tyler. See you in the next video.